I'm Tracy Sable. Tonight on EWTN News Nightly, global gathering. Hundreds of thousands of young people are in Portugal for the opening of World Youth Day. We have a report from Lisbon. Life and death. How U.S. lawmakers are working together to stop the heavy flow of a dangerous drug. Deepening crisis. New developments in the coup in Niger, including how foreign countries are responding. And aiding those in need. Learn how a U.S. diocese is helping Ukrainian refugees. These stories and more tonight.
From EWTN, the Global Catholic Network, this is EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you for being with us on the Feast of St. Alphonsus Liguori. Our top story tonight, the 37th World Youth Day kicks off today in Portugal. Hundreds of thousands of young people are already there and more are still yet to arrive. The Vatican says it has great expectations for the global gathering. Cardinal Pietro Parolin, the Vatican Secretary of State, says a nearly week-long event offers an important opportunity for young people to be closer to Christ. He also describes the Holy Father's arrival tomorrow as an opportunity to call for prayers and peace. Joining us now from Lisbon is Andreas Thonhauser, EWTN Vatican Bureau Chief. Andreas, great to see you as always. Can you tell us more about the final preparations for the World Youth Day opening?
Yeah, hi Tracy. As you can see, we're in the middle of the beginning of World Youth Day. I'm just a few meters or feet away from our studio for the English-speaking language, and we'll broadcast from here live over the next couple of days, covering all the events of World Youth Day. As you can see, the park here where Pope Francis will welcome the pilgrims on Thursday has already filled up. He will only arrive tomorrow morning, and then he will have a full program until Sunday, including also a short visit to the Shrine of Fatima, which is just an hour away by car from Lisbon. But today, the opening Mass was scheduled to be celebrated here in this huge stage in the heart of Lisbon. And the altar, as you can see, has the shape of a wave. And actually, from here, you can not only see the center of the city, but also the river Tagus, which flows into the Atlantic. And Holy Mass was celebrated by the Patriarch of Lisbon, Cardinal Manuel Clemente.
And, so the first pilgrims have already arrived. We hear many of them in the background and see them. Do you know how many people are expected to be there?
So there are really already hundreds and thousands of people in Lisbon right now. The organizers said today there are 190 or 200,000 registered pilgrims here. Altogether, they have registrations for 354,000 pilgrims, but they also expect the number to rise until Sunday, until the final Holy Mass with Pope Francis, to be close to 1 million. And they are prepared for that. They are looking forward to welcome all the pilgrims here. And they also say for every registered pilgrim, there's possibly 2 or 3 pilgrims that are not registered.
Yeah. And tell us, Andreas, about the mood there in Lisbon right now. I'm sure you had a chance to talk to some pilgrims there. What are they saying?
Yeah, so the mood is great here. There's a lot of excitement in the air, which is true for both organizers and for pilgrims. I interviewed today a group from the United States, and one recurring statement from the young people who have come here was that they are here to encounter Christ. And together with the Holy Father, they want to celebrate their faith, but they also want to understand a better path for their life. And what is happening here now in Portugal over the next 3 days is that the pilgrims will participate in sessions together with their bishops from their home countries. And those sessions are called Rise Up. It's a new format for catechesis, which is much more a conversation than just a monologue or a lecture by the bishop himself, but really engaging with the young people to discuss matters such as evangelization, but also ecology, mercy, and other important topics, especially for Pope Francis.
And Andreas, before I let you go, as you mentioned before, Pope Francis is set to arrive tomorrow. Tell us a little bit more what's on his agenda.
Yeah, correct. Tomorrow morning, Pope Francis will land in Lisbon. First, he will meet with representatives of the government, with civil authorities, and then later with bishop, priests, and seminarians in the famous monastery of Geronimo. And on Thursday, as I said, he will welcome here in this beautiful park all those pilgrims who have come from across the world. And I'm sure the mood will even be better than it already is. Tracy?
Andreas, thank you so much for that report. We appreciate it. God bless. And meanwhile, back here in the U.S., the flow of drugs into the country from the southern border has skyrocketed. Deaths from illegal narcotics like fentanyl have resulted in over 100,000 deaths last year alone. Lawmakers are taking steps to stem the flow and save lives. Capitol Hill Correspondent Erik Rosales has more on that.
Good evening, Tracy. Republicans have long criticized President Biden and his administration for what they say is slow-walking efforts to curb the flow of fentanyl across the southern border. Republican Senator Ted Cruz tells me that's been a deliberate strategy.
Their big talking point is the massive influx of drugs, and in particular Chinese fentanyl, has nothing to do with Joe Biden's open borders. And it's bizarre. It's incoherent.
He's not alone. Republican Senator Rick Scott tells me the borders are open under the Biden administration, and now Congress must step in.
What we've got to do is do everything we can to help our law enforcement deal with the issue that we have in this country right now, this unbelievable amount of fentanyl and the crime that is coming across our borders.
In late May, the House passed the Halt Fentanyl Act, which would permanently classify fentanyl-laced drugs as having no medical use. This ensures law enforcement has the authority to seize all fentanyl-related drugs. The bill also increases penalties for all fentanyl-related drug convictions. One of the bill's main sponsors, Republican Congressman Bob Latta, tells me the measure sends a message to Mexican drug cartels.
The cartels in Mexico can change a little bit of it, and they'll say, oh, it's not fentanyl anymore. And so it's a fentanyl-related substance, and so this will give the prosecutors that ability to prosecute everything now.
The White House and 74 Democrats supported the House-passed Halt Fentanyl Act, but some, like Congressman Frank Pallone, who led Democrats' opposition, say the bill simply continues the status quo. Quote, we simply cannot incarcerate our way out of a public health crisis. The American people deserve bipartisan solutions. The Halt Fentanyl Act has yet to come up on the Senate floor. Meanwhile, Republican Senator Rick Scott has introduced the Social Media Act, which is designed to combat illicit drugs like fentanyl to be sold over social media platforms. That, too, is yet to come up to the Senate floor. At the Capitol, Erik Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
President Joe Biden makes a controversial decision to keep the U.S. Space Command headquarters in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Alabama wanted it in Huntsville, as did former President Donald Trump, who late into his administration selected Alabama. Well, tonight, critics say President Biden's decision was based on abortion politics. White House Correspondent Owen Jensen reports.
U.S. officials say President Joe Biden, who continues his vacation, believes moving the headquarters now would jeopardize military readiness. And here at the Pentagon, officials say the decision was based on an objective process. But Alabama lawmakers are not buying that one bit. President Joe Biden's decision on where Space Command headquarters is located has Alabama lawmakers furious. Senator Tommy Tuberville blasts the administration on social media, saying it has politicized our military, destroyed our recruiting, misused our tax dollars for their extremist social agenda. And now they're putting Space Command headquarters in a location that didn't even make the top 3. Going on to say, this is absolutely not over. I will continue to fight. And tonight, accusations that abortion politics played a role in the choice. Senator Tuberville is holding up Pentagon promotions, much to the angst of the Biden administration. The Alabama Republican says tax dollars paying for troops to travel to get abortions is wrong. And a follow-up. Critics contend that this is a violation of the Hyde Amendment, the Pentagon's response.
Yeah, that's patently false. It is not a violation of the Hyde Amendment. As you know, the DOJ did an opinion, which they've posted to their website on this, saying that this policy is legal.
But U.S. officials said the abortion issue had no effect on President Biden's decision and instead was made to maintain stability, avoid disruption in readiness, and better compete with China. Meanwhile, as the president continues his vacation, Vice President Kamala Harris in Orlando, Florida, speaks at the African Methodist Episcopal Church.
In states across our nation, extremists pass laws that criminalize doctors and take away the freedom of a woman to make decisions about her own body.
And separately, Nicaragua. No word yet on demands for Catholic Bishop Rolando Alvarez to be released from prison. And a Nicaraguan lawyer says 65 women religious have been expelled from the country since 2022. Yesterday at the State Department, EWTN News Nightly asked this question.
What's the message, the Biden administration's message to Daniel Ortega, who continues to persecute the Catholic Church in Nicaragua? I would say that we, of course, believe in the freedom of religion everywhere and would encourage the release of wrongfully detained people who are detained for exercising the freedom of religion.
Now back to that decision by President Biden on Space Command's headquarters. Huntsville, Alabama actually scored higher than Colorado Springs in a government assessment of potential locations. At the Pentagon, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
The Department of Homeland Security is taking new actions against forced labor involving religious minorities in China. In a statement today, DHS named several businesses it would no longer allow to enter into the United States. Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas said in part, quote, "We will continue to work with all of our partners to keep goods made with forced labor from Xinjiang out of U.S. commerce while facilitating the flow of legitimate trade." France is preparing to evacuate citizens from Niger, this as the European Union is calling for the release of the African nation's president, who has been held hostage since a coup attempt last week.
We still need the release of President Bazoum.
While the leaders of the coup are gaining support from 3 neighboring countries, others in Africa are calling for travel and economic sanctions against Niger if the president is not reinstated by the end of the week. Amid several destructive wildfires in Greece, authorities there say they are planning to increase penalties for arson. The push comes as Greece has struggled with 10 major wildfires over the last month. The new measures would carry a fine of up to $55,000, 10 times the current amount. If found guilty, a person could also face a maximum jail sentence of 10 years behind bars. While the Kremlin says that it has foiled an attack by Ukraine on civilian ships in the Black Sea.
Сегодня ночью киевский режим осуществил попытку террористической атаки с применением.
A defense ministry official accuses Ukraine of using submersible vessels to target the ships, adding the strike was thwarted. Meantime, Russia also accuses Ukraine of a second drone attack in Moscow's business district. No injuries were reported. Ukraine denies the claims that it attacked civilian vessels. Well, we have a lot more still to come here on EWTN News Nightly, including taking a stand, why pro-life groups are suing the state of Vermont, and helping those in need, how a diocese in western Pennsylvania is helping Ukrainian refugees build a new life. Groups are suing to stop Oklahoma from funding what would be the nation's first religious public charter school. The school board voted to approve taxpayer funds for St. Isidore of Seville Catholic Virtual School. Opponents say the vote was a step against religious freedom. A federal appeals court is allowing the state of Kentucky to enforce its recently enacted ban on so-called gender-affirming care. The measure was passed despite a veto from Democrat Governor Andy Beshear. It prevents transgender minors from getting access to puberty blockers and hormone therapy. A pro-life organization and 2 pro-life pregnancy centers are suing the state of Vermont. The state recently passed a measure targeting pro-lifers. It says if pro-life centers advertise their services in a way the state finds misleading, the pro-lifers could be fined up to $10,000 for each violation. The proposal also would ban anyone who is not a state-licensed medical professional from providing health information or even post-abortion counseling. Go now to Jean Marie Davis, Executive Director of Branch's Pregnancy Resource Center, one of the 2 pregnancy centers suing the state of Vermont, and her lawyer, Erin Hawley from Alliance Defending Freedom. Ladies, thank you both for being here. We really appreciate it. Jean, I want to start with you. Before we talk about this new Vermont law and your lawsuit, I want to talk about you personally and what led you to the work that you're doing right now at the Pregnancy Resource Center. This is a really powerful story, I know.
Thank you for having us. Well, I was raised in human trafficking. So I was trafficked from the age of 2 to the age of 29. So that meant being molested, raped, threatened to be killed many times, to the point where I trafficked around the United States for 33 different states. And at the age of 29, when I was pregnant, I reached out to my pimp and told him that I was pregnant. And he said, I don't care. I only need my $1,500. And if you don't give it to me, you're dead. And that was kind of the routine of my life. So I fled. And after calling 27 different shelters that denied me because they said that my situation was too severe, a shelter in New England and New Hampshire said that they would accept me. And that's when they told me about the pregnancy center. And when I went into the pregnancy center, at that time I was abortion minded, and they allowed me to have an ultrasound done. And when I heard the heartbeat of my child, that's when I wanted to keep my child. And I looked at them and said, okay, I'm homeless, now what? And they actually helped me to get into a program to where now I've graduated, have a degree in biblical theology, and now I'm back as a director, doing the same work that helped and saved my life, because without the pregnancy center, I would have been dead.
Oh, Jean, praise God. And what an incredible story. Thank you for sharing all of that with us. And, you know, we pray for you. What about this new law? I mean, when you heard about it, what did you think? And what effect has it had on your efforts to advertise your services and help women in need, women like you?
Well, it's frustrating because we're a non-medical site, so we focus really much on the resources, on helping the community with the women and children that might be going through unplanned pregnancies. So when being a survivor of human trafficking and setting up to where I've worked very hard these last few months to connect with our community, between the police officers, the fire department, the hospitals, even the public schools, to let them know that there is hope and there's help, that to know the state wants us to now consider it misleading if we provide information that is not affirming their agenda with pro-abortion.
Erin, I want to turn now to you. I want to talk a little bit more about this S-37, you know, these penalties that are involved, and also what exactly they mean when they say misleading advertising by the state.
Absolutely. Well, I think the first thing to highlight here is that Vermont is explicitly targeting the very pro-life pregnancy centers that helped Jean Marie. And she and other pregnancy care centers like hers are affirmatively helping women to have real choice. They are providing tangible and free help to women in need. And yet Vermont is going after those same pregnancy care centers. The law does not apply to abortion providers. It only applies to pregnancy care centers. And it's really vague. As you pointed out, what might be misleading is really vague. And the whole point of the vagueness is to silence pregnancy care center speech, to allow just one message to be said in Vermont, and that to be a pro-abortion agenda. So we are so thankful for Jean Marie, for her story, for her testimony, and for her willingness to fight back against this.
And Erin, quickly, tell us about this lawsuit now. What do you hope, you know, comes from it, and where do things stand right now this moment?
Absolutely. So we have filed a complaint against the Vermont law, and we are hoping that a federal court will find, in accordance with NIFLA, which was a Supreme Court win by Alliance Defending Freedom, that held pro-life pregnancy care centers, just like everyone else, have a right to speak freely under the First Amendment and should not be coerced into saying something that violates their First Amendment rights. So we're hoping the federal court will agree with that quickly, so that centers like Branch Pregnancy Center can continue to operate and provide these literally life-saving services to women and children in need.
Well, ladies, thank you both for coming on and talking to us about all this. We really appreciate it, and we're going to continue to follow this story in this case. God bless.
Thank you.
Up next on EWTN News Nightly, help from above, what a poll says about Americans' attitudes towards angels. Plus, aiding our neighbors, how one diocese is launching an initiative to help Ukrainian refugees. Poll says that a majority of Americans believe in angels. According to the Associated Press, around 70% of American adults say they believe in angels. In addition, 79% believe in God or a higher power, while only 56% say they believe in the devil. Finally tonight, according to the UN Refugee Agency, since the war in Ukraine began back in February 2022, more than 6.2 million people have left the country in search of a new life. And now some of the faithful in Western Pennsylvania are lending a helping hand. Catholic Charities of the Diocese of Greensburg is helping some Ukrainian refugees find a new home and a fresh start. And joining us now to discuss this initiative is Bishop Larry Kulik of the Diocese of Greensburg, Pennsylvania. Your Excellency, great to be with you today. Thank you so much for your time. I know that you're leading this effort along with Archbishop Boris Gutsiak of the Ukrainian Catholic Archieparchy of Philadelphia. That said, tell us how this all came to be.
Well, you know, right after the beginning of the war in Ukraine, there was a great wellspring of desire here in the Diocese of Greensburg and really in southwestern Pennsylvania to look at ways that we could not only help the people in the Ukraine, but as it became very apparent very quickly, the number of refugees were increasing. We wanted to be able to respond to that. And so our planning in this effort really began to take place just shortly after the beginning of the war.
Yeah, and I understand a number of families recently came out to the area to visit. Can you tell us a little bit about their trip, what it involved, and what they did while they were out there?
Sure. Well, we had a great opportunity just the other day to welcome some of these newcomers to the Diocese of Greensburg, and particularly to Westmoreland County. And we were able to facilitate their transportation here to Greensburg. And in facilitating that opportunity, we were able to gather with members of both the civic and also the business community, and to welcome them personally to the diocese and to see if we could help facilitate them making Greensburg and Westmoreland County their new home. And we had wonderful opportunities where businesses were here waiting to interview people. We had people from the civil realm looking at ways in which we could help with housing. So it was really a great orientation to this part of southwestern Pennsylvania and to a place that we hope that they find welcoming and certainly would be somewhere they could call home.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Now, I know a lot about that area. I grew up in southwestern Pennsylvania, but some folks don't. So, Your Excellency, can you tell us a little bit about the Greensburg area, Westmoreland County? We know it's just outside of Pittsburgh. What's the connection there for these Ukrainian refugees, and why would they find it's a good fit for them and maybe feel like home?
Well, I think this part of the United States and Pennsylvania, as you know, and particularly our Catholic community here in this region, was really bolstered and really formed in many ways by immigrants of the late 19th and early 20th century, many of whom came from Central and Eastern Europe. And so I think culturally, there's a great fit here with the ethnic legacy of this region. And also we have a lot of opportunities both with Ukrainian Catholic churches in this region, as well as fraternal organizations. But I think most importantly, what I experienced the other day, this outpouring of welcome, was really a way in which the people of this region were trying to pass on the blessings that they had received from their ancestors of a couple of generations ago who really built our communities, built our churches, and they themselves came here to find a new home and a new start.
And what are the next steps for these families? You know, what's going to happen next with them?
Sure. Well, we're working with them, and I'm happy to say that after our first meeting, we had a lot of interviews with our businesses. All of the people who were here present really seemed to enjoy the area and actually were very excited about the prospect of locating here in Western Pennsylvania. And so we're working very hard to continue to help them in getting employment opportunities, which right now are very much available here in Western Pennsylvania. And also we're continuing to work. You know, we have 133 families that have expressed an interest in visiting. And we are in the process through Catholic Charities to help them and assist them and facilitate those visits. But what we've come to experience is this is a very time-consuming process, but what we believe is that the process we're undertaking is going to have great benefits, and in the end is going to be very beneficial both to the newcomers and also to us here as a region in southwestern Pennsylvania.
Yeah, and for those who are watching right now, I know there's a lot of viewers in that area that watch EWTN. If they're watching right now and they want to help, how can they do so?
Well, probably the easiest way is to visit our website at www.dioceseofgreensburg.org/welcome to Westmoreland, where we have our website set up with all kinds of information on how you can help, how you can also, if you are a Ukrainian newcomer, you can get information. And one of the great things we have is this website, this particular spot on the website is bilingual. So it has been translated into Ukrainian. So those who may not speak English can hopefully very easily navigate themselves and gather information.
Well, Your Excellency, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us about this. We appreciate it. God bless you.
Thank you, and God bless you.
And we thank you for watching tonight. Remember, you can follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at EWTN News Nightly. I'm Tracy Sable. Good night, and God bless.